Make it plain.
Make it plain.
M.I.P.
With Masamela Matfumo.
Mark Thompson.
Make it plain.
Get woke.
God bless you. Get woke. Folks, MIP is now COVID-free, meaning free to all subscribers as we navigate this pandemic. We're thinking about everyone, and we've got to get through this together. So for a limited time, no fee to subscribe to Make It Plain on your favorite podcast app. Ladies and gentlemen, just to start things off this morning on the show, I want to say something about the death of Ahmaud Arbery. It is very disturbing to see that, but as many of you have seen the video, but I want to say this. Showing me the HBO documentary, Atlanta's Missing and Murdered Children, and I hope some of you seen that. If you haven't, I hope you will. But showing me that, and then revealing the case of Ahmaud Arbery to me, makes everything in that documentary, which was everything that we suspected that was going on in Atlanta in 1981, true. Because the Ahmaud Arbery case is a case where white men killed a young African-American man and just got away with it. It was just swept under the rug. And the allegations in the documentary, the Missing and Murdered Children documentary, as well as the belief at the time in Atlanta, and even up to today, was that Wayne Williams was not the only one, that he, in fact, may have been a scapegoat. And there was evidence that there were white supremacists involved in the deaths of all of our black children in Atlanta. And so that makes that very possible. So Ahmaud Arbery could have been one of those young people in 1981. And we never would have known. We probably would have been told Wayne Williams did it. So that is fresh in mind when I look at this case and I look at this tragedy. And once again, our over acquaintance with death in America as African Americans, our over acquaintance with death. When James Baldwin wrote about the Atlanta child murders for Playboy magazine, and then in his book entitled The Evidence of Things Not Seen, you know, he talked about not so much the terror of death, because death was unimaginable, but the terror of being destroyed. And he said back then in 1981 that our lives didn't matter. And so what is the difference, really, between Ahmaud Arbery and those children killed in Atlanta in 1981? Anyway, on to my guest. Folks, it's been a few, but glad to have him back for DailyKos. He is the founder, publisher of the largest online progressive community, of course. And we've been doing this together for a number of years, DailyKos. From DailyKos.com, Markos Moulitsas. Hey, man, how are you? And first of all, how's the family doing? How are you all faring in the Bay Area these days?
We're all still buttoned down. Everybody's doing great. My kids are they're starting to chafe a little bit, but it's all manageable. And this is the first time I've joined you on video, actually.
I think it is, yeah. Very first time on video.
Brave new world.
It is. Very brave new world. And I love the orange, the DailyKos colored background.
Yeah, not on purpose. Well, it is on purpose in that orange is a DailyKos color because it's my favorite color. So there's a lot of orange around my house, and so I happen to have an orange wall, and it worked out nicely. Yeah,
that's great. That's great. So, man, so much to talk about. First of all, what's Civiqs saying? Civiqs with a Q, by the way, folks, about the coronavirus and Trump's base, his eroding support. What's the latest there?
So Civiqs with a Q is our polling data project, and it allows us to track public attitudes on a daily basis in all 50 states. So this is a really cool thing. It's a panel. There's about 1.5 million people on this panel, so it allows us to do scientific polling. What we're finding is that there used to be a massive partisan gap between those who took coronavirus seriously and those who did not. So of course, Democrats and most independents thought, yeah, this thing's deadly. Let's take care of ourselves. And Republicans were listening to Rush Limbaugh and Tucker Carlson and Fox News, and they thought it was all a big hoax. And Donald Trump, right? Mm-hmm. After Donald Trump admitted that, yeah, okay, a lot of people are going to die, and if we keep deaths down to 60,000, I will have done a really good job. At that point, Republican concern did go up. And while it never matched the numbers we saw with independents and Democrats, at least a majority of Republicans thought that they needed to take the coronavirus seriously. So progress. That's all gone. It's all gone. It's Trump now is talking about opening things up, and then you have Governor Kemp in Georgia and other states. They're opening things up. You have these stupid protests. So basically, we're back to where we began, where Democrats and independents think that this is serious, and Republicans suddenly, once again, think that this is all a big scheme to try to defeat Donald Trump at the ballot box, or maybe it was a concocted in a Chinese lab, or maybe it doesn't even exist. James O'Keefe, yesterday was talking about how it's all a big hoax, and these are all crisis actors. So we're back to where we began. And I gotta say, if the coronavirus just circulated amongst that crowd, I think I'd be okay with it at this point. Like, I'm done. I'm done caring about those people. They're if you're gonna be that stupid. But it doesn't, right? It sees no boundaries. It doesn't care about ideology. It doesn't look at state borders. So these people aren't just putting themselves at risk, which I can almost deal with. They're putting first responders at risk. They're putting medical personnel at risk, and they're putting their neighbors who may be actually doing the right thing at risk.
Yeah. So Democrats and independents, though, seem to be pretty clear and consistent.
Yes.
Those numbers ought to be enough to carry us in November, right? I mean, are we still talking about Trump having somewhere between 35 and 40% of Americans?
Yes. Yeah. So that's concern about the coronavirus. Now, if you look at satisfaction with the government's response, it's a different question. Sorry. Trump is definitely falling. Republicans think he's doing a great job, of course. We expect that. And Democrats, and they never give him the benefit of the doubt, right? That's always been at 95% disapproval. But what we've seen is that independents are definitely starting to sour on Trump. So their numbers are going down. Uh-huh. And conversely, in almost every state except Georgia, notably, people are happy with their local response. And it doesn't matter if the governor is Democratic or Republican. So you have a Republican governor in Massachusetts and a Republican governor in Maryland, which are very, very blue states. People are overwhelmingly favorable towards those governors. And then you look in Kentucky and Louisiana, they have Democratic governors, in the red states. Again, people are overwhelmingly supportive of those governors. So it's only Trump, and this is, so it means something, right? So it's not people are anti-government or the government sucks, is they're realizing that Trump abandoned them to the states. They're happy with their state performance, except in Georgia. In Florida is 50-50. But everywhere else where governors have actually taken this seriously, people are actually really appreciative of that. So the erosion in Trump's numbers, and it's slight, like numbers don't change very much, right? They spent 3 years defending Trump. They're not going to go like, you were right, liberals. There's a slight erosion, but it's real amongst 65 and older Americans. And that's really, really, really notable because it is the most reliable voting demographic. And that is essentially the core Republican base. And we're talking a slippage of, we had we had Trump winning 65 and under and over by about 13 points at one point. It's down to 5 points.
Wow.
So it is a real erosion, and we're seeing it nationwide. We're seeing it in the battleground states. And if you look at the battleground states, and every time we talk, I'll talk about them, right? Because they're important. The states that will decide the presidential election are Arizona, Florida, Georgia, Michigan, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. 7 states. Doesn't mean other states don't matter, because there's governor races and Senate races. But if we win Iowa, we already won those other 7 states. And if Trump wins Minnesota, he has already won those other 7 states, right? So those are the 7 states: Arizona, Florida, Georgia, Michigan, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. Right now, Joe Biden is leading in 6 of those 7, and he is only losing Georgia by 2 points, according to our numbers. In fact, we just released a poll of North Carolina on Tuesday. I think it was Tuesday. Yeah, Tuesday. That didn't just have Biden winning North Carolina 49-46, looking really good to win the state. 49-46 is basically what Obama got in 2008 in North Carolina. But in the Senate race, we're winning 50-41. That's a Republican seat that we would pick up. So Democrats are looking really solid, and a big piece of that puzzle is the response to the coronavirus. And right now we're at 72,000, or as of yesterday, we were at 73,000 and change. Obviously, that number's going up by about 2,000 a day. So we're already higher than that. And now we're talking about, by August 1st, we should be in the low 100,000s. That is absolutely insane. So this approval with Trump is already rising. The Republicans have signaled that they don't care about vulnerable white people for the first time. They've always signaled they don't care about vulnerable Black people and Latinos and Asians. They don't care, right? Native Americans. Suddenly they're saying we don't care about vulnerable white people. And that is going to have an effect. We're starting to see that with those white seniors starting to move in the Democrats' direction. And I haven't seen anything that suggests that Republicans are realizing they're in trouble, and that maybe they should stop talking about sacrificing our old people for the stock market.
Last demographic I want to ask, let me do 2 things. Since you did mention the states, the battleground states, we know that some of us in the African-American base are disproportionately dying in these states, Markos.
Yes.
So one of the things that concerns me is where in 2016, it was less than a margin of 100,000 votes that affected 3 states. You got Black folk dying disproportionately, especially in Wisconsin, Michigan. We don't know all the numbers elsewhere, but we can probably hypothesize it's pretty bad everywhere. I mean, that makes me a little nervous when it comes to those numbers in November. The more of us who die, and that's just African Americans, not to mention when nobody's keeping track of how many, non-Trump voters overall are dying. But I mean, this could, and part of that suggests to me that's why he doesn't give a damn either. Because he's kind of hoping all these deaths, some of the people are going to die who voted for him, but some of the people who are going to vote against him died too. So that's probably why he doesn't care.
Yeah. I mean, this is a very crass political question with numbers, and I don't really want us to lose the humanity of it all. It is true that Blacks, and now we're starting to find Latinos in some of these meat packing plants and poultry plants, right, are disproportionately affected. Absolutely. Raw numbers, more white people are dying. As a percentage of the population, I mean, we're talking if what did I see in I think it was Indiana, where the Black population of Indiana is like 18% or 15%, and it was like 25% of deaths were Black. So yeah, disproportionately it's affecting us. And you're right, this is why Trump doesn't care, and he's decided we're good, we're moving on.
Right.
More white people are dying if we were going to play that horrible game. But more than that, I think maybe I would say more importantly, but it's what's happening is that those numbers are shifting. So in Wisconsin, as of 3 weeks ago, it was something like 20% of the counties most affected were Trump counties. So it's 80-20 because it was Milwaukee, it was Dane County, right? It was where you expected where Black people live. And again, in some places where you had some of these poultry meat packing plants where a lot of Latinos are also being affected. So as of a couple of days ago, Wisconsin's now 50-50. So red counties and blue counties. So it's shifting because you're seeing that in New York, right? You had at one point, you had almost 900 people dying a day. Now we're down to the low 200s, right? Blue states and Democrats and liberals realize how dangerous this is and are taking it seriously. Now you have these dumbass Trump supporters doing their stupid rallies without masks, no social distancing. They converge on state capitals, they do their little stupid rally, and then they go back to their counties carrying this freaking virus. And what that's happening is that virus is now spreading in red counties at much greater percentages than in red counties. And we have a lot of months between now and November. So what's going to be happening, and what is happening, we're seeing this right now, is that the fastest growth in COVID cases is in red counties. Now, I do want to caution that a lot of those red counties have prisons, and prisons are being disproportionately affected. A lot of those red counties have poultry plants and meat packing plants. So that's a lot of Latinos are being affected as well. But they are starting, because they're not taking this seriously, because they think it's some kind of anti-Trump hoax, because they think this is a New York City problem and a New Orleans problem and a California problem, they're not taking this as seriously. And what that means is that we have, and there's always, several weeks lag, right? But you're going to see more and more of these states starting to get hit in the weeks ahead. I mean, counties, these red counties going to get hit. So from a calculus, it's an ugly calculus. But I think even if we see, I can't even predict at this point. I thought 100,000 was the worst case scenario back when we started talking about this in February. We were talking about it early. I thought 100,000 was like a crazy possibility. We're going to blow by 100,000 in weeks probably. So this is going to be like nothing. And but the raw numbers aren't enough to really be shifting elections. Probably.
Okay.
I mean, maybe in Florida. It's less about people dropping dead, and it's more about people's families going like, "Did grandma need to die?" Or did my 37-year-old otherwise healthy son need to die? Or did my neighbor need to die? Or did my hairdresser need to die? Or it's that sense of 9/11 killed 3,000, yet it affected an entire country, right? Because there's that emotional connection to people. Right. And this is what I think is politically damaging. And it's the messaging. It's people wearing around signs. There's this sign that was floating around in a Tennessee pro-COVID rally. I mean, there are pro-COVID rallies at this point, right? So it's a Tennessee pro-COVID rally that said "Sacrifice the weak, open up Tennessee." And it is that message that seniors don't matter, and why don't you die and get out of the way because my stock portfolio is taking a hit. That is going to have more of an effect in the election. If we're already starting to see those numbers erode, and again, we're talking 5 points among seniors, right? But if we're starting to see that now at 70,000 dead, what's going to happen when in the fall we may be at 250,000 dead?
Yeah.
Right. Because we got a second wave coming. It's going to happen. And for viewers and listeners who don't know, the problem with the second wave isn't COVID itself. It's that you have the flu, which already kills 40,000 people a year on top of COVID, and you're not going to have hospital beds, because that is the biggest factor in the survival rate. So unless a vaccine comes, and it ain't going to come by November, if it arrives by some miracle, the first people that are going to get that vaccine are going to be first responders and medical personnel. The ability to get that into the general population is going to take a while. You may have better treatments, but you still need hospital beds.
Yeah.
So you're going to have the flu, you're going to have COVID on top of that, and you're going to have people that are so frustrated that haven't been locked up for so long that they're going to really start slipping on the social distancing thing. And Mark, I feel it with my kids. Like, why don't I do a play date? And the kids can stay 10 feet apart, and that's okay. Right. And I want to do it because they're so desperate for social interaction with their friends. And it's like I had to fight it. And we're only like, what, 7 weeks in?
Yeah. It's
what happens in October?
Yeah. Well, let me just let you inform you, though. You said we're not going to have a vaccine by November. My NFL devotees, those whom I know, swear that there has to be a vaccine by the time NFL season starts. So that's what, I mean, you hear these people, no, Mark, there's going to be a vaccine. I say, how do you know? Trust me, it's got to be. We can't have an NFL without it. It's just going to have to be. So, yeah, I kind of laugh at those folks. Okay, so.
You know what, though? I feel them. I miss sports so desperately right now.
You know what I'm doing, man? You got to get it. Well, see, it's true. It's really early for you. 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, maybe earlier. On the East Coast, we get Korean baseball now. On ESPN.
They're playing?
Yeah, the Korean Baseball League just started this week. No fans in the stands, but you get full baseball games. So you should check your DVR, whatever, or you can probably get it where you get on the app now. But you can get Korean baseball games. It's fascinating. And the other thing is, the bat flip over there is considered a sacred form of art. It's not considered as disrespect. You're supposed to flip the bat when you hit a home run. And it's an art form. They've done articles about it. Who has the most artistic bat flips? So that's a whole.
It's like a touchdown dance.
Yeah. It's a beautiful thing. So, but last demographic though, 53% of white women. Where are white women on Trump now?
So white women are I mean, they're definitely eroding. That's always been from the first moment we started talking about Trump being president. White women have always been the only swing demographic. Now we're seeing old white people. So, let's see if that holds, and I think it'll hold. But white women, suburban white women, are totally done, and we don't even need to look at polling to see the value of suburban, and it's suburban educated white women, right? It's college educated. It's education's now become one of the biggest predictors of partisan affiliation. Sex and religion and education will pretty much tell you, and race obviously, will tell you how somebody's going to vote like 95% of the time. It's almost comical. We just saw that in Wisconsin a few weeks ago, where we won a state Supreme Court race by not even close. It was over 10 points. And it was because the Milwaukee suburbs have switched. And it's really funny because before that election, I was looking at those Milwaukee suburbs and they look red, right? It's like, is Wisconsin the only state in the country where suburban white women aren't switching to the Democrats? And those suburbs were still red, but they used to be so red that you almost don't see it, right? I mean, it was still a 15-point shift. But in Wisconsin, that 15-point shift in the suburbs was enough to blow out the Republican. And I know this is not your question, but I got to talk about this because this is effing amazing. Is that Milwaukee and Kenosha have now agreed to mail ballots automatically to all registered voters in those cities.
Good.
Counties. And we're seeing this in a lot of blue states. And this is where winning the governor's race was so critically important, because the state legislature in Wisconsin they successfully blocked doing this statewide. Yeah. But they can't block counties from doing it because we have the governorship, we have the Secretary of State office. So now we have all the blue counties starting to decide to mail these ballots. And I got to say, I don't want to jinx everything, and it's going to be a dogfight, but it's really hard for me to see how we lose Wisconsin if we get our people to vote when they cannot suppress the black vote in Milwaukee. That's how they won in 2016. They did it in Detroit in 2016 as well. So I'm hoping, and I don't know, laws are different in every state. So I don't know if blue counties in Michigan can do the same thing. But Wisconsin, the ability to automatically mail ballots to those blue counties, that means the red counties are going to have to follow suit, right? So in the end, the whole state's going to be automatic vote by mail. That's great. It should be that way all around the country. Yeah. And we're seeing that in Florida as well. Several of the blue counties in Florida have already announced that they will be doing, no, they're not going to be doing ballots. They're going to be doing mail ballot applications. It's a little different, but still sending people notice that they can vote by mail. It's absolutely huge. And Republicans win by suppressing the Black vote, by suppressing the Latino vote, by suppressing the student vote. And it's going to be very, very hard for them to do so. So these are all things that are happening. These are all good things. And with that shift in voting patterns with suburban white women, for sure, that's a big one. And I think that one will deliver the Senate for us. Yeah. If you make it easier for everybody else to vote, there's no reason that Black voters should have to wait 6 hours to vote. You mail them a ballot, you make it easy. You tie that in with souls to the polls, but you don't actually have to walk to the polls. You can fill it out right there in church, right? I mean, it shifts the balance of power dramatically. It makes us a more democratic, small d country. Everybody can vote. And if everybody can vote, Republicans don't have much of a chance.
Yeah. Well, so let me stay with women. Tara Reade. What does it is that going to be a big problem? Is that story a big problem? Has Joe Biden answered it? Now remember, you moved me on Al Franken. And when you took that position and I took it with you, you know, everybody didn't agree with us, including a lot of women. A lot of folks still mad about that. Do we apply the same rule to Joe Biden or no?
Well, the rule, I mean, so here's, obviously this is unfortunate. It's one reason I say we shouldn't be nominating men anymore. Just period, right? Okay. I mean, and Biden's not my guy. I have zero interest in defending Joe Biden himself. We know he's very handsy. We've seen that. It's who he is. I have no doubt that he touched her because he touches everybody. The difference is that Al Franken admitted to the behavior, and it was on film, right? I mean, the evidence was there. I believe very strongly that every woman should be heard, right, and be taken seriously. And I actually believe that has happened. People have taken her concerns seriously. They've investigated them. The fact is that much of that story hasn't held up yet. What has been public, how she talked about, I filed a complaint on sexual harassment, and then Biden said, all right, let's look at the complaint. And she said, well, maybe it didn't mention sexual harassment. Those are the things that make it tougher. There's no pattern for sure. With Franken, several dozen women, at least a dozen women came forward and said, yeah, this stuff has happened. Definitely happened with Kavanaugh. We haven't seen that happen with Joe Biden. I gotta say, from a personal level, I can sit here and talk about those Democrats that have a reputation for being rapey, and Joe Biden has never been one of those people. Now, I don't mean that in any definitive way. I just say that the rumor mill is strong in Washington, D.C., and there are people who have a reputation, and Joe Biden wasn't one of them. His reputation is he touches too much, and it's a little creepy. And I'm not going to gloss over his giving women back rubs crap. I mean, I think he's very inappropriate in his touching. Does that extend to digital rape? Nobody ever has alleged that. Right. And so to me right now, the preponderance of the evidence is that, yeah, he probably touched her, but did he digitally rape her? It's hard to see that, particularly since her story has changed significantly. So I'm not making a declarative decision on this. I mean, I'm not an investigator. I haven't dug into it. I'm just kind of been in a wait and see. Like, let's see if anybody else comes forth. Let's see if this is corroborated by anybody else. Let's see if that Senate record, I know the Senate parliamentarian or whoever it was said that they couldn't release those employment records, which I find kind of odd. I don't know if she can request that they be released because it's her records, but I'd love to see those. Definitely, since she made that such a big part of her story, is that she had made these allegations in this report. Now, of course, she walked it back once. But there's too many inconsistencies, and that clear evidence isn't there. And to me, that clear evidence is in corroboration. Like if you have 10 women come forth and say, yeah, he stuck his fingers down my panties.
Right.
I'll be like, okay.
Right. But try this on Markos and tell me what you think of this. In terms of consistency on and you're right, there's some mitigating factors in compared to other cases. But to me, it's becoming like a sentencing disparity for Democrats, okay? So that when there's a Me Too allegation against a Democrat, it is almost universally expected, even from some of us, that person has to go away or withdraw, or whatever it is. Whereas for Republicans, it's business as usual. And see, to me, and that just takes me back to Franken, that doesn't excuse the behavior, but it's like crack and powder cocaine. Neither one of them is good. But why should one person go to prison for a longer term, get a harsher sentence for what is basically the same drug? And so when it comes to politics, I think we have to think about that. And so now you look at and I think this is a perfect scenario to have this debate, because you got, and I like the way you distinguish it. I think that's an interesting way to put it. Maybe it's more appropriate for a woman to put it this way than for us. But Hansy versus Rapey. You've not heard Rapey. You've witnessed Hansy. Everybody's seen that. I don't think there's been a dispute. But no, there's never even been a rumor or a scintilla of a rumor. And as much as the Obama folk vetted folk, they vetted me and you, and we weren't even going to be in the administration. They vetted everybody they went in the room with, before they even met us. They knew who we were. They would have found that man. I mean, if Joe Biden had that kind of history, oh God, there's no way in the world. I have no doubt that they didn't go over there with a fine-tooth comb. But I think that there's this double standard, this sentencing disparity. So you're going to say, well, we're going to throw out the alleged Hansy guy, and we're going to keep the serial sexual assaulter in office. And I think that's something that and I consider myself if not a fully involved, but a supporter of the Me Too movement. I like to think I'm fully involved. The movement has to have that conversation. What do you do in a situation like this because even in the court of law, there are degrees of crimes that are committed. So you got somebody on the level of a Weinstein or a Cosby in the White House, and then you've got one allegation uncorroborated against Joe Biden. I think we got to have a conversation about that at some point.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason for that disparity, though, and that's that our base is women, and their base is not. So their base is rapey white men. so they, and we're not. I mean, if solely Democratic women said, you know what, we're not comfortable with Joe Biden, I'd be 100% with them. Right. I mean, it's to me, it is critically important, just like I'm the same way with our Black base and our Latino base, right? If somebody is that problematic, that it's a problem for them they may vote for that person because Ruth Bader Ginsburg. But if it's hurting them to do so, I actually take that into consideration, right? That's important to me because we are a coalition, and I hope that they have my back when certain issues come up.
Sure.
So, I mean, that's why.
But I still see women in this conflicted in our base. I think let's be honest, that women are conflicted, and women are being called in that way. Wait a minute now, if this was somebody else, you would have zero tolerance. Why not for Joe Biden? That's why I'm saying I think even women, the movement, you kind of have to establish some type of template. And I would throw into that conversation, all I'm saying, throw into that template in that debate for women, because I agree with you, whatever they decide is where we got to go. Is there not a sentencing disparity? And see, we're victims of our own morality. So because our base is so broad, we have the moral high road. That's how you won the argument about Franken. Let's take the moral high road, y'all. Let's just not even deal with this.
Yeah.
So, but man, we keep taking the moral high road on just an ounce of evidence or less. Again, we're wiped out, and the rapey superheroes are in the White House, the governor's mansion, and everything else. That's the only thing I'm raising.
But you know, it's obviously tough. I remember when we were talking about Mayor Bloomberg when he had his little moment, right? And he said, "I can't. If he's nominated, I can't vote for that guy."
Right.
We all have that line where
Yeah.
somebody is so offensive to our core values that we just can't cross it.
Yeah.
And clearly, for Biden being handsy, isn't one of those cross the line things. If he went around sticking his fingers up people's panties, I'm pretty sure that might be that line.
Yeah.
So, and do we really want that person in the White House? And when there's alternatives, it's not like it's him or the highway at this point. The party could coalesce around a consensus. You know, we have the delegates still being allocated. They could come together. It would be very small d Democratic, but you know, in an emergency, particularly we're in the middle of a global pandemic, we may have to adjust. Luckily, we haven't gotten to that point yet. People aren't being fully tested. And I don't think Reade is, her story hasn't been rock solid, which sort of mitigates a lot of the moral qualms that you're talking about, right? I mean, if she was corroborated and it was just one case, but it was her and it was confirmed that she did that, this would be a much more difficult conversation, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be. It would be. So, last point, again, speaking of women, he's pledged to pick a woman. I think we all expecting to pick a woman. It's just a question of which one. You, of course, have been strongly advocating for Elizabeth Warren.
And Stacey Abrams.
So, what do you think he's going to do? First of all, let's start with Stacey.
It's a tough one, right?
But let's start with Stacey. Do you agree with the criticism of her allegedly campaigning for it? I'm not convinced that's what she's been doing per se, but
I think she has. I definitely heard from inside the Biden camp that people are annoyed at it. I don't know why. I don't see the problem with it.
2020.
And who cares that she's saying, yeah, I'd be a great VP. I'm not. I don't understand the sort of visceral negative reaction.
Because it never happened before. You're supposed to be coy and just, oh, no, I don't know anything about it. Nobody's called me. I've never heard of the job. I mean, it's 2020 though. I mean, who does that anymore? It's kind of antiquated, right?
Yeah. She is, I think, the safest choice, which is
right.
Because she sort of speaks to people who want a black woman on the ticket.
Yeah.
And she doesn't offend the left. Now, a lot of the left doesn't know her, so they'd have to get to know her better. But those who know her aren't offended by her the way that Kamala Harris is offensive to certain segments of the left, and definitely an Amy Klobuchar might be. So I think Abrams, and the knock on her really is experience, and I don't care, to be utterly frank. I think she has enough experience. She's competent. Clearly, she's an incredibly competent woman. And to me, the VP's number one job, and maybe the only job that matters, is get the ticket elected. This is where Hillary Clinton failed with Tim Kaine. He brought nothing electorally to the ticket. So I think Stacey Abrams absolutely brings something to the ticket electorally. I also think Elizabeth Warren does. And in fact, I think they're the only two candidates that we're talking about that really do that. Elizabeth Warren automatically brings most of the left, the Bernie left, into the ticket. We have a unified party heading into election season, which Hillary Clinton did not have. Our Revolution, which was that offshoot from the Bernie campaign in 2016, they polled their members, and 61%, I believe, this was back in Tuesday or Monday, 61% picked Elizabeth Warren, and about 20% picked Stacey Abrams, which again sort of bolsters my theory that they're the two that best unify the party. And the thing that I've been reading tea leaves, and the tea leaves are actually pretty strongly pointing to Warren right now. You have Barack Obama praising her coronavirus plan when he hasn't praised any other candidates, not even Joe Biden's plan.
Wasn't that something?
Huh?
Wasn't that something? I mean, yes,
Yeah.
you're vice president. I'm like, dude, you skipped right over me and went to
Yes.
plan. I'd be a little concerned about that. What is he saying, really? Okay, go ahead.
Right. So you have Obama, you have Clyburn saying, going from it has to be a black woman to like, it would be nice for it to be a black woman. That was an important shift because I don't think Biden does anything without Clyburn's approval. He better not anyway. He better not because he owes where he's at to Clyburn. There was the joint op-ed earlier this week where Joe Biden and Elizabeth Warren collectively wrote an opinion piece attacking Donald Trump's coronavirus response. You have multiple polls now coming out saying that the vast majority of Democrats want Elizabeth Warren as the VP, and there's no drop off amongst Black Democrats. That was a very interesting. There was a CBS poll that came out earlier this week that said 71% of Democrats want Biden to consider Elizabeth Warren, and that number was 72% with Black Democrats. And then when they asked them which one do you think you should pick, who's your top choice, it was like 36% for Elizabeth Warren, and then Kamala Harris was in second with like 22-23%. So Warren is sort of the consensus pick amongst the party base. Clearly, Biden has been very friendly towards Warren in recent weeks. And then the last piece, which is very inside baseball, but the person that is in charge of Joe Biden's transition team is a guy named Ted Kaufman. Ted Kaufman used to be his chief of staff when Joe Biden was in the Senate. When Joe Biden was promoted to vice president, Ted Kaufman was appointed to that Senate seat for 2 years. So he was a caretaker senator. Right. In those 2 years, he introduced a bunch of legislation targeting Wall Street. He's a very anti-Wall Street, very populist Democrat. His politics are 100% aligned with Elizabeth Warren. And this is the guy that's in charge of, he's clearly Joe Biden's biggest confidant. He's in charge of shaping that administration. And so having that voice in Biden's ear sort of, I think, is probably significant. And in fact, in 2016, Joe Biden at one point was considering mounting a primary challenge to Hillary Clinton. And in those conversations, Ted Kaufman talked to Politico and said that, yeah, we were talking about coming out of the gate with Elizabeth Warren as our VP choice. So back in 2016, Biden was talking about having Warren be his VP if he ran. So there's a lot of tea leaves. And of course, when you're reading tea leaves, you're reading tea leaves. So none of this is definitive, but it does speak to very strong hints that she is at least being strongly considered.
There are two of the other candidates. I'm going to throw a few names out there for you and just get quick reactions because there's some other buzz we're hearing around other people that would be, to use your baseball analogy, kind of out of left field, but maybe not so bad, shake things up a little, surprise or not. Catherine Cortez Masto.
I mean, I love her. She brings really nothing electorally. Just from again, to me, the number one job of a VP is to win the ticket. The states that are competitive, the 7 states, only two have significant Latino populations, and that's Arizona and Florida. And Florida's Latino population is Puerto Rican and Cuban. Masto is Mexican. It's not. People don't realize it's not a monolithic.
Yeah, definitely not.
So she would help in Arizona for sure. There's 6 other states that matter. Those 6 other states have significant Black populations. So if you're going to pick somebody of color, pick those or unify the party. She doesn't unify the party.
Florida, Val Demings.
She would be great. The jump from the House to VP is a big jump. She's not very well known, so you'd have to spend several months introducing her to the Democratic electorate. So she doesn't unify the party immediately the way Warren does and the way that Stacey Abrams does half of the way through, right? I mean, there's still some introduction there, but I'd be thrilled.
Last one to throw out. Let's go back to Georgia. Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms. Her name has also come up. the mayor.
Yeah. Like it's a name ID. It's to the point where like I like the idea of her. I actually don't even know enough about her to and I'm sure she'd be great. Everything I've seen superficially would be great. To me, again, the number one, and I love a Black woman, particularly Georgia, because I consider Georgia to be incredibly important.
In play,
So I'm not saying no, not her. She doesn't unify the party as quickly and as efficiently as Warren and Stacey Abrams do.
Gotcha. We've cut a lot of ground, caught up, and we'll continue them. Folks, we'll be back on schedule too with Markos every week. Join us here on Thursdays on Make It Plain, the podcast. Markos is also, you're doing a YouTube weekly show too, right?
We started last week, and we'll see how it goes. It's a good time to experiment, try new things. But I think I like it. I think I'm gonna.
This is, if you want to try on anything, this is the time to do it. I mean, in this. So, if folks, if y'all want to try,
I'm not traveling anywhere, so.
So no, looks good. I saw you had David on. David's great. David Neer. Well, okay, man. Y'all continue to stay safe. I hope you and the kids continue to hold on. Are your kids eating up all the food in the refrigerator like mine does?
No, it's the opposite. I think their stress reaction is to eat less.
Really?
Yeah, and to the point where I'm trying to worry a little bit.
Yeah, some kids different though. Boredom makes you eat more.
Yeah, I'm an eat less person. I was. Now that I'm older, I don't think that's happening anymore. But when I was younger, I was a very skinny kid. So
Okay.
Yeah, but congratulations on New York. You guys are mostly doing a good job staying in place, and the numbers are coming down.
Yeah, and that's a good thing. It got bad up here for a minute. There was a plan some of my loved ones made on my behalf to at one point even evacuate me from New York. But it was so far down in the process, so far along in the process. Any place else I went, I would have been going into another jurisdiction's peak. So then it was like, do you leave a place that might be flattening to go to another peak? So it's just, and there's no, as you pointed out, there's no escaping this thing anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, if there's any place that's come down and leveled off a great deal, it's where you are. And I said to people, listen, well, if I'm going to go anywhere, I need to go out there where Markos is, because they were the first ones. They've really flattened. It's not going to be another peak, at least immediately. But we've toughed it out. We've been fortunate. We have yet to see Markos. And I was talking to someone else I knew. You almost have, it's been so high in New York, you almost have a level of survivor's guilt. But it makes you curious. Well, why so many other people right around me and next to me? And so, I think a lot of it has to do with public transportation, because a lot of people in New York still rely on public transportation, and those subways are filthy, and the buses are probably as filthy. And then I think there's also a tendency, as you know, many New Yorkers order in food all the time. We've only gone to the grocery store. My son and I have not ordered in food since we've been under lockdown since March 13th. And I just have kind of had a paranoia about that, because when people are preparing your food and bringing it, you just don't know. And even down to the containers. So we just go to the grocery store and prepare everything. So that's work for us. So I'm probably going to keep that up for as long as we can, but then you get tired of your own food. You want to do something different, but we're not going to take the risk. So I'm just wondering, what else has been going on in New York to make people so susceptible to it? But so far,
we're an international transportation hub. People were coming in for weeks.
Yeah.
It just spread when nobody knew it existed.
Right. And no telling where it was coming, so many different places it was coming from.
Yeah. That's it. This is how the middle of the country got lucky. They're not entry points for other hotspots outside the country. And so they could have kept things quiet had they shut down and taken this thing seriously. But now it's growing in Florida. It's growing in Texas. It's definitely growing into Nebraskas and Iowas. So it just happened to get hit beforehand. And the Bay Area shut down 4 days before you guys did. And literally that might be the difference. I mean, that's how ridiculous and fast this thing was growing.
Yeah.
So.
DailyKos, largest online progressive community. Check it out. Check out all of Markos's latest columns and The Brief. Look for that on YouTube. What days do you air on YouTube?
Same day. Today, Thursday.
On Thursdays. Okay, great. So we'll look for that today as well. Buddy, thank you. Love to the family. And we'll talk again next week, okay?
All right. Have a great one.
Thank you. DailyKos. Thank you for listening to Make It Plain and Get Woke. Remember to listen, like, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts. If all minds are clear, it has been made plain.